You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a wash machine.
Conte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot. Oh my word.
Unbelievable. We ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. This week I'm joined by Dan, who runs PremWorldWide on Instagram. Dan started the account sometime last August, and it's gone from being just nothing when he started it at a scratch, thin air, whatever you want to say, to being over 11,000 followers in just a little under a year, and a good source of really staying up to date with all kinds of things that are happening around the Premier League. And Dan is a Saints fan. He lives out of the country, but interesting background, speaks lots of languages. We'll talk about all of that in just a little bit. But you can also follow Dan on Twitter. He's at DeadlyJanepo on Twitter, and so you can find him there. The links to those are in the show notes. But we had spoken originally on Thursday. We spoke Thursday afternoon after news had broke about Janepo and the fixtures as well, and we put that out as a Patreon only episode right then. So now we spoke again this morning or yesterday morning, and we kind of went over some similar things. We have a little bit more time to think about them now. So hopefully it all makes sense, all folds together just fine. But make sure to follow Dan on Instagram at PremWorldWide and on Twitter at DeadlyJanepo. And the only thing I want to say before we get started with the show is Jay, who runs the Southampton page on Instagram, the official partner page of the show, is doing Brave the Shave, which is a way to help the Macmillan Cancer Support Center. It's a way to support them and raise funds for them. And they help people that are living with cancer. And they were a big help to Jay and his family and his grandmother in the time leading up to her passing. So if you are interested in supporting that cause and you're able to do that, there's a link in the show notes, and I'm sure Jay would very much appreciate it. And as will the other families that you will help out by doing that. So if you have a chance, it's down in the show notes. And that would be a big help. But if not, of course, we all understand, and that's just fine. So anyway, let's get on with the show. We have a new signing. We have an article featuring Hasenhuttl to discuss. We have fixtures, plenty to go around. So we'll even throw in some talk of Liverpool coming down and taking some more players off of our hands. And we'll see how we feel about that. But anyway, hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. We'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast Dan. You can find him on Twitter at DeadlyJanepo, Janepo. We'll figure it out. And also, he's on Instagram at PremWorldWide, which that account has grown from just nothing as of last August to over 11,500 followers as of right now. But Dan, welcome back to the show, and thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me on today. It's actually really nice to be back. Yeah. Yeah,
and it's we're trying to push the recording, I would say later and later, just because the transfer news, it kind of sometimes changes from time to time. So it's important to kind of get it out. So we're talking, I think it's already nighttime where you are. And it's morning of Monday now for me. And so this will be out in less than I guess it'll be out in 12 hours or so. So that's what it is. But anyway, welcome back to the show, and thanks for doing this, and kind of quite a few things to cover since last episode. Some of the stuff was found, you can find it in the newsletter. We wrote about the transfers, we wrote about the fixtures and things like that, but we'll talk about all of that today, as well as some of the questions that we got from some of the supporters of the show and some of the followers of the show. So we will get to all of those, but I say we just start with the fixtures. Actually, before we do that, let's talk a little bit about your show, or not your show, but your page. If people haven't been around for a while, maybe they're new listening and they haven't heard about the page, like what would they find when they visited PremWorldWide on Instagram?
Just genuinely transfer news and all, and just updates in general. It's a lot of news, yeah, and sometimes a lot of polls, and it's similar to other pages, but I do things in my own way. So yeah. Yeah,
and in kind of a unique time for you, because you are not in the UK, so that you get I guess the UK news cycle kind of has a flow of the day, but you have that news at basically a different time than everybody else. So I think maybe that is one thing. It's that you have that's different than everybody else, but also like it is a Premier League dedicated page, so it's not just Southampton stuff, so you can kind of stay up to date with that. And I've said 1,000 times that the transfer window is maybe my least favorite thing, but there are people who enjoy it. You're one of those people, so I'm glad to be able to talk to you about it, because following the page allows me to just kind of stay up to date with what's going on around the league at enough detail that I don't have to worry about running from this site to that site to all this stuff. So I appreciate the work that you do and putting all that together.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's sometimes hard work, but I'm just glad to see it pays off.
Yeah, and as long as you're enjoying it, that's really the main thing. So it seems like you do. Whenever we talk about it, you always seem to be enjoying doing all that. So yeah. But I guess jumping into the fixtures, because that was one of the things that came out. Thursday was a busy day for Southampton fans and the Southampton media team especially. And I didn't put it on the outline, but did you see the thing on Twitter where the team put up all the emojis in terms of when they released the fixtures? Did you see that?
No, I actually didn't. Can you send that to me?
Yeah, for sure. I have the image here.
Are you sending it on WhatsApp, Twitter, or?
I just threw it on the outline.
Hey, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, people were not. If you read through the comments on the team's Twitter page, it was not. People were not thrilled with the idea. They were just like, I don't have time for this. Just send me the damn fixtures. And I thought it was pretty funny. I couldn't figure out all of them. I'm sure if I would have spent a little more time with it, I could have. But the team was also nice enough to send out the actual schedule. So I thought that was great. One comment from Glenn Delacour on the team's post was he asked them to use a wastebasket for Liverpool from now on, which I thought was fantastic. So thanks to Glenn for that. But I mean, you can see there are all the fixtures. Obviously, we have to play kind of everybody. You can see the international breaks in there. You can see the Christmas the holiday fixtures in there. So I think it does a pretty good job. But the actual fixtures obviously are out, and there are a couple of things, and I wrote about a couple of them in the newsletter last Friday as well. But just looking, once again, we have Burnley on opening day. The only difference this year being that it's away. So the one thing about being away to Burnley to open the season is Freddie from the Ugly Inside Oiska mentions the weather at Burnley is usually freezing. In August, it might not be that bad. So I guess that's the one positive of having to face Burnley on the opening day of the season once again.
Yeah, definitely. And well, considering that Burnley are, safe to say, not one of the best sides in the Premier League, obviously. I'm kind of glad that we get off to an easy start before facing Liverpool, because it gives us time to see what needs improving in the basic fixtures. Yeah, and the difference again this year is they won't be involved in the Europa League, so perhaps they are not quite as polished. But it's not an exciting opening fixture. It's not one of the newly promoted teams. It's not a big team. It's just Burnley. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, it's not another 0-0 draw to open the season, but we'll take it.
God. But the fixtures though aren't necessarily all that kind. The first two home fixtures obviously are Liverpool, who are last year's second place in the Premier League, intentionally skipping anything they may have actually accomplished. Brighton away, and then Man United at home, which Man United may be going through a transition. There was the Pogba, his comments may seem like he's looking to move elsewhere. So I don't know. I mean, the home fixtures necessarily aren't that great, because after that, you wind up going away to Sheffield United, then you host Bournemouth, then you go away to Spurs, and it's going to be a tough run, I think, to open the season, but it should give us a pretty good idea of what Hasenhuttl has been able to accomplish over the summer and through preseason. Yeah,
and along with the preseason friendlies, it'll seem like a good way to figure out how we're doing. Yeah.
Any of those fixtures really kind of, I don't know, stand out to you as being especially difficult, maybe besides Liverpool?
Personally, I think the Man United game will be interesting, not because it'll be difficult, but because we might have a chance of winning, and if Manchester United get their new signings over the line, they might have a very exciting squad. So it'll be a big game, and we'll be able to see just where we are in comparison to the top six in that game, if you ask me.
All right. Yeah, it should be a good test. And also, I think the points that we take from that could be, it could give us some real momentum going into the season. I mean, last couple of seasons, we've started pretty poorly. They haven't been exciting starts to the season. I don't think even on opening day that people were really looking forward to it. I think people were just kind of putting up with it almost. And this should be a completely different vibe around the team. And if we can kind of keep that going with some of the, I don't know, with some points picked up against teams, Brighton, not necessarily a rival, but on the South Coast ish. And that's always a good away day. United at home, that's, anytime you can take points from them, that's something to be said, even if it isn't, the United that, of previous generations. So I think that'll be good. One thing I noticed about the season or about the fixtures is we alternate home and away, home and away, home and away for, I think, all the way up until November, right? Is that what we kind of looked at? We were looking at it where
yes,
we have.
It seems so. Yes.
So, I mean, that's, I find that to be interesting. I don't think that's necessarily normal, but maybe we'll get some cup games in there that will, give us back-to-back home games, so we won't be having to travel, all over the place. But we will see how that rolls out when they roll out. The international breaks are always going to be an issue to start the season. Basically, you play 4 games, you have a break. You play 4 games, you have a break. You play 4 games, you have a break. And then you have that run up to Christmas where you don't get a break, and it'll kind of be what it is. But overall, I think it's pretty exciting. But looking down at the fixtures themselves, do you see any runs or any stretch of matches that are really going to you think maybe give us trouble?
Yeah, definitely. Personally, I think the beginning of the season is rather shabby. We face, obviously, 4 of the top 6 in our first 8 games. So that's on average 1 in 2 games where we face the top 6. So that's going to be a bit complicated. And it'll really show us where we are and, if we're struggling, obviously, because if we play towards the end of last season where we beat Spurs and we gave Man U a good run for their money, right? Then it'll be able to show us how we're doing and if we're living up to Ralph's expectations and if we're still the giant killers of last season. And there's also a bit of a hard run in April where we face both Man City, Man United, Everton and Watford, which were all top half of the table sides last season. And that leads on to our slightly easier month of May where we face Brighton, Bournemouth and Sheffield, which will possibly be one of our easiest runs of the season. But yeah, April also looks to be a hard run, and it's not, I wouldn't exactly call it unfair, but it's one to watch out for sure.
Yeah, and by that point, it'll be interesting to see, which of those teams are involved in other competitions still, whether we are or they are. That could change the selection depending on how they are kind of gearing up for end of the season type run. So we'll see. You assume Man City will be in the running. They'll probably be involved in the FA Cup at that point, hopefully. Or not hopefully. I don't actually hope they are, but you just assume they are. They could have Champions League fixtures to worry about. So we'll see how that goes. As you mentioned, the end of the season, Sheffield United at home, so newly promoted team at home on the last day of the season. We haven't played very well the last day of the season, the last couple of years. I guess you could say the City game we played all right and only lost it at the very end. But it'll be interesting to see that again. But I want to say this is I think the third year in a row we've had a home game to end the season. So that hopefully we'll walk out winners this time. And that should be good. But, you look at some of the I guess you just look at some of the fixtures and you going away to some of the newly promoted sides, going away to Villa. That should be an interesting start to the holiday fixture list. Then having to come and then immediately go away to Chelsea, come home for Palace. So that should be interesting. So we'll see kind of how all of that goes. I don't know, anything else that stands out to you there, or you think we can move on?
I think the February-March fixtures are actually pretty kind to us as well. After facing Liverpool on the 1st of February at Anfield, we go on a run of not facing the top 6 for another 5 games until facing Arsenal at the end of March before an international break. So we face Burnley, Villa, West Ham, Newcastle, and Norwich, and that's 2 promoted sides in 5 games. If you ask me, that's actually very promising, and we'll have a lot of potential to make up ground in the league during that period. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And it's, I don't know, you look at a lot of those are home matches as well. So you look at hosting those guys, you hope that you can take points from them. The only thing will be, if they come and sit deep, can we break them down? But that'll all be, we'll have to see how the season is playing out at that point and what players we have on the pitch at that point. Cause, it looks like there could be some movement, and obviously that involves the newest signing of Djenepo. Is that how we're saying it, or how would you say we say it?
I believe so. Yeah.
All right. So in addition, probably the bigger announcement that happened on last Thursday was the announcement of Moussa Djenepo coming over from Standard Liège. The cartoon, the video that was put out by the club, once again, great. And I don't know, it's kind of it's exciting. But at the same time, I'm afraid to put too much expectation on him. He is only 20 years old. He is, really only played a season and a half, maybe 2 seasons in I don't want to say a top flight league, but a league of some repute. And now he's going to make that jump from Belgium all the way to Southampton, and I don't want to put all the pressure in the world on him at such a young age, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't truly excited about him showing up and maybe what he's going to bring to the team.
Yeah, I think he's he, like it was announced on the Southampton Twitter page, right? The official page, he had a quote where he talked about his qualities and how he was excited about joining the team. He said his qualities was getting at players, dribbling past them, and running a lot, right? And just driving forward the attack. So I'm really excited for that because it looks like we have a real talent on our hands. And considering he's only just turned 21, I think he turned 21 last week. And
he just had his 21st birthday. That's right.
Yeah, he just turned 21.
Signed as just a 20-year-old. Obviously, you mentioned he just turned 21. 14 million pounds on a 4-year deal, according to the Daily Echo. That's some price to pay, considering that Standard Liège got him for just, I think it was £45,000. Just 2 years ago from the team in Mali where he came from. He went on loan from Mali to Standard Liège. They thought this is good enough. We will take him. Exciting. He's played plenty in the Europa League and things like that. But I don't know. Just thinking about how he's going to fit into the team with the speed, I think that's really the thing that we can be excited about, and maybe the dribbling and I don't know if you've watched any of the highlight videos online. Those are always a little bit dicey, but what have you seen from him running at players also? But anything else that you think he's going to bring to the team, or is it just the pace and opening up space for Redmond, or what do you think he's actually going to be able to do?
Personally, I think with the new 4-2-2 system, which Ralph seems to prefer, right, that he's probably going to fit in as one of the 2 players behind the strikers, preferably wingers, right, or as you would consider sided attacking midfielders. So, like in a 4-2-2 system, there would be 2 defensive midfielders, 2 attacking midfielders, or wingers, along with 2 strikers. So it's a more centralized 4-4-2. Where the wingers in the 4-4-2 would move a bit more centrally to concentrate the attack down the middle. I think Moussa Djenepo will work well down the middle because he's really good at driving forward the ball. he'll move to get the attacks forward quickly. I think he's going to aid in our counter-attacking and just to make the attack more fluent and less stagnant as it was previously under Hughes and Pellegrino, and possibly you could say Puel as well. So he, I don't know about your opinion on him, but he looks like he could really bolster the attack, even though he may not be a starter immediately.
Yeah, I think the pace is a big deal. I don't think we have enough of that in the attack, and I think we missed on a couple of wingers in the past few transfer windows. You think of Boufal and how he's fit in and fallen out with the team and the manager. You think of Elianusi, how he just didn't quite have an impact. You think of Armstrong, who I think played more centrally at Celtic, didn't really find a place necessarily in the team week in, week out at Southampton. So you wonder kind of what his role will be. And then you look at Nathan Redmond, who really was the standout attacker last year. And I think part of this would be Djenepo is probably going to play on the left, just behind the strikers in the system. And I think what we'll see and what Luke Osman pointed out in his article, his kind of in-depth write-up that he did last week, was that likely that Nathan Redmond will become one of the strikers or play maybe just behind the striker or as a second striker, which, raises questions for me in terms of who plays alongside him. Is it going to be Che Adams? Is it going to, if we get him in, is it going to be Danny Ings? And how that all kind of works. And I think Djenepo on the left will kind of free Redmond up to maybe drift a little bit and find himself in more space to be able to turn around at players and also have maybe a balance to that attack. And so it's not just Nathan Redmond running at people when we have another sort of attack. But I don't know. I think that's how it's going to work. I was initially a little bit, I don't know. I guess I worried a little bit about how that was going to work with Redmond, because Redmond seemed to operate best off of the left. But there were several instances last year where he seemed to shift across the front and also play as a second striker, which I think he is kind of growing more accustomed to. I think he'll become more and more, Raheem Sterling-esque, where he can kind of shift anywhere across the front. He can play as a striker. He can play as a winger. And I think the Djenepo will kind of operate, I guess, on the left. And I think that'll be good. I think that gives us some flexibility in terms of attack. And then, as you said, the pace on the counterattack is going to be huge. And one of the things that, I think was pointed out was there was, the dribbling, the ball seems to be glued to his feet at times, which is something that I think that we lack a little bit. So I think that'll be really, really good. The one thing I just wanted to point out again was, are you worried at all about the amount of money that he has cost us, given that he has, he was just £45,000 just 2 years ago, and now all of a sudden he's 14 million. Do you see that as Southampton, maybe being too late, or is it as an example of other teams taking advantage of the fact that we're a Premier League team and that's just what the fee is going to be? Or what do you make of that?
I mean, there's not exactly going to be much money we can spend on other players if we all spend it on expensive players, right? So I think the board's just going for young talent, and nowadays young talent does cost a bit more. And seeing as we are Premier League teams, it already raises the price for a player as long as you want to buy it, because they obviously know you'll pay more money for the player because you have more money. So honestly, I think that the player was a good spend. I think it was a good £14 million spent, considering we were originally rumored to be buying him for £22 million. And I think that as long as we spend money a bit more frugally, and we sell the players that are necessary to sell, like the Deadwood, like Fraser Forster, who's on $100K a week wage. If we sell Austin, if we sell Gallagher, if we sell Klasi, then we might free up some funds for a couple more moves. But as you said, it could possibly be that we were too late. But the scouting team is good. They've obviously noted Moussa Djenepo at Liège when nobody else has, because otherwise there would have been more teams after him and the price would have been even higher. So I think this is a good move by the scouting team, and that we can look forward to more good moves in the future.
All right. I like the idea of us buying young, and it's one of the things that Ralph pointed out. We'll get to the article that or the interview he gave to Sport Build in just a little bit, but it's one of these guys. He fits the profile. He's young. He has raw talent. He has some physical attributes that including pace that are that we can work with. But he still needs some development. He's still going to be a little bit raw. He's still going to have to learn. But those are the players that Ralph wants to work with. And I think that it's what fans are willing to. I think we'd rather see that. We've seen how buying players that are slightly older has worked out for us, and they're already kind of set in their ways. They're not maybe going to do the running that Ralph wants. They're not maybe going to be. They're less maybe less likely to change the way they do things. Whereas as younger players who haven't played in a kind of a big league or a big system before, mean that maybe they come in and they say like, thanks for this is a huge opportunity for me to develop and to work and to, maybe get a move eventually to later on. And so if they're willing to put in the work that way, then I think everybody wins in that case. And we eventually, I imagine Djenepo, if he works out the way we think he will, he'll move on to a different team somewhere else at some point, and we will turn a profit on him. Whereas, we've signed some other players recently where we just haven't been able to do that. They haven't kicked on. And you're stuck kind of with these contracts that are lengthy and expensive, and you wind up just having to send guys out on loan in hopes that they'll do well enough to earn a move somewhere else. But hopefully this is getting back to kind of what Southampton was good at, which is identifying talent in other leagues that other people didn't pick up on. So even though he is expensive, and even though it does worry me a little bit, just the jump in price, I think that's a product of when we show up to look at a player, then other teams go like, you know what, if they're looking at it, then it must be, we can probably raise the price a little bit because they are looking to identify this talent early. And if we can get a fairly hefty price for him, they're probably going to sell him on at some point. So it just kind of all works out. So he was called up to the men's national team. Now he's been involved with that for some time, but part of the reason that the team had to delay the announcement of Djenepo was a work permit issue, and it resulted of him not having enough kind of senior caps for the men's national team. But he's going to be involved in the African Cup of Nations. Algeria, they lost to Algeria at time of recording yesterday, so Sunday. They drew with Cameroon on last Friday, but they will pick up the group stages on Monday the 24th, Friday the 28th, and then again on July 2nd. So they will play Mauritania, Tunisia, and Angola, and so we will see kind of how they go out there. And it's good that he's involved. Hopefully he can get on the score sheet and maybe get his preseason going a little bit early, because you imagine after that he'll be showing up to preseason kind of just ready to go, I guess, or maybe he has to take a break. I'm not sure how that'll work out, but hopefully he gets into the team soon and is ready to go. So I don't know, anything else on him? Anything else that really stands out to you that you that really excites you about him, I guess?
Well, as I said previously, his attacking potential will help us translate to more counterattacks, right? And considering that Ralph Hasenhuttl likes to use the fast attack and the clever attack in order to trick defenders and just to not be lethargic when running forward, I think Moussa Djenepo's fitness and his pace and his dribbling will obviously cause problems for defenders. But other than that, I just see him as a convenient, pacey winger who's got a lot of potential and not much else, to be honest. Hopefully, as time goes by, we'll get to see more of him, and if he has anything else to offer. All
right. Well, the team has been linked with a number of other kind of moves. Che Adams, that rumor's been there for some time. There's some linking to a Celtic man who also has the same agent, I guess, or is represented by the same people as Stuart Armstrong. So maybe that's another target. But as far as I'm concerned, those are rumors, and I would rather talk about the potential rumor that has come out, which is Alex McCarthy to Liverpool as their backup goalkeeper. I don't know if you've come across this over the last couple of days, but I'm having a hard time believing it. But I guess we could get lucky in this case, and just to kind of look at it as a whole. We actually, I think, maybe need to get either McCarthy or Forster off the books in terms of it just in terms of we have 3 England goalkeepers on our team. Gunn is probably going to get the start unless Forster has a really good preseason, and Ralph mentioned last year that Forster looks the best out of all 3 goalkeepers in training, but Gunn is the guy that was getting the starts and was performing, I guess, reasonably well, and he's obviously playing for the England youth team now, so he's
especially showing how when Forster actually got the bloody opportunity, he against West Ham, it's safe to say he blew that opportunity pretty hard.
Yeah, well. Yeah, I mean, but at that point we weren't keeping clean sheets anyway, right? Like we were struggling to keep clean sheets, but he definitely could have done better on a couple of those goals. And Ralph mentioned in training he does it, but I think there's still issues with Forster's confidence, and because of that, I'm not sure we're going to be able to get rid of him based on the contract that he's on, and he's got little incentive to really move. Why would you give up all that money and in a place where you are comfortable, and even if you feel like you're getting better, to go and potentially have a really bad time elsewhere. So, but I mean, given that, and would you agree to a McCarthy move if you had some say in this, or would you say no because it's Liverpool, or just no overall because you want him to stay?
Well, it would depend on the price, really. But honestly, I don't really believe this rumor, seeing as they've already got Mignolet, Karius, and Alisson, because Karius is only on loan. So don't forget that their starting goalkeeper for 2 to 3 years is on loan away, and that if they need a new goalkeeper, he's ready to come back. So I don't see why Liverpool want a 4th goalkeeper unless they're selling Mignolet. And in other ways, I think that we shouldn't sell unless the price is slightly higher than usual, because don't forget McCarthy's still really good. He's just had a bunch of bad games, and that led to him being dropped against Chelsea by and Gunn took his place, right?
Right.
But that doesn't exactly make him a terrible goalie, which we should get off the books. We need to get rid of him for at least like £9-10 million. And as long as we sell him and we use the funds to fund Che Adams' move, that will probably be money well spent, because we've already got too many goalkeepers anyway. Once we sell McCarthy, if we do, which I doubt anyway, we can probably move Jack Rose up to the first team, seeing as he's doing really well in the under-23s.
Yeah, I mean, in the 3rd string goalkeeper, not getting very many starts, so he could actually probably still play for the youth team and be ready to come up if necessary, and he could train with the first team from time to time. I think that would all be just fine. But I have a really hard time believing that this is where Liverpool are going to look for a backup goalkeeper. I think it's just at this point in the off season, I think it's just a way to get people to click on the article and give something for our fans to yell about, because it's once again Liverpool coming in for one of our players. But I think that's one of the things that we're really going to have to consider this season is, we're looking hopefully for 1 or 2 more signings from the club, but those aren't going to happen without people moving out. And it's not. If you look at the amount of the number of players, just sheer number of players that we've accumulated over the past couple of seasons, kind of, I think, as Les Reed's eye for talent and the scouting department's kind of failures, I think, over the past couple of seasons, I think we've just accumulated too many players, and some of them are going to have to go, and not all of them are going to be the guys that have been out on loan that we haven't seen in the first team. I think some of them are going to have to be first team players that we know and like and think they've done well for the club, and I think that's just how it's going to be, and hopefully we don't have another Dusan Tadic type situation where the guy goes off and is has the absolute, like, almost the best season of his life in terms of goal scoring and goal contributions and things like that, and we have to look back and go, like, we missed him or whatever. But I think we're gonna run into an issue. We're gonna see good players leave, and I think that's gonna have to happen if we want to bring in some of the players over the next couple of transfer windows that we really, really want. So, the other thing that's kind of come up is the Daily Echo reported that both the club was willing to listen to offers for both Bertrand and Matt Targett, and I think you and I talked about it when we talked late last week a little bit, but I mean, looking at that, which of those two would you prefer to stay at the club now. If we're going to take offers for both, you just take whoever offers more, or whoever's going to get more of a profit for you, or do you take? Is there one that you would prefer for, in terms maybe long-term development or just performance now or leadership or whatever it is?
It's a hard decision, to be honest, because the Chelsea youth system produced Ryan Bertrand. He obviously made his debut in the Champions League final. He's got a lot of history. He's quality. He's going to be 30 by the time the season starts. So he's also going to be a bit old, if we're honest here. And he's not exactly going to improve much, is he? And he's already done a lot of service to the club. So if we can cash in on him now and probably invest in more signings, we could probably save Matt Targett and develop him into a starting left back. Or we could use the money to buy a new left back or a right back, possibly. And I think that as long as they're younger and they have more potential than Ryan Bertrand currently has quality, I think it'll be a good move for the club and for Ryan Bertrand as well, so he can seek new pastures.
I mean, he's been at the club since 2015. His contract doesn't expire until 2021, but you imagine at that point, you're not signing him into another long-term deal. You probably aren't getting a whole lot of money back for him at that point, simply because I think he's hit his peak already and is probably on the way down in terms of value and things like that, just because he's going to hit 30 years old. And, maybe he has I think he could start for us all season. I think if he stays, he could be the number one, but Matt Targett at his age, he now needs game time. He needs first team football if he's going to make that next step, that next development. He already has. There's interest in him from Fulham, where he's already been. I think Aston Villa are interested in him. I think there's concrete interest there. And from his perspective,
and supposedly Liverpool and Arsenal are interested in as well, but that could just be fake news. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at Arsenal, they could use him. They have, Kolasinac, I think I don't know what he is. He plays football. He runs really hard. He puts crosses in. He's not a great defender. They've been playing a back three. Targett can play as a wing back. Monreal is not getting any younger, and he tends to move into that left center back spot because they are struggling for center backs. But, maybe he could fit there. Sure. Liverpool, I can't see him working in that system. I just don't see him being that good, but I don't know. Maybe that's the system where he can go, but I don't see him getting first team football there either. I would have a really hard time imagining Matt Targett starting in the Premier League for the reigning European champions. I would have or Champions League champions. I'd have a hard time imagining that. But I think when you just kind of break it down and look at kind of what, I don't know. I guess the profile that Ralph is looking for, the age that they're at, the contract that they're on, the long-term kind of ability to develop players and what Targett could potentially do. I think Targett is probably the right choice, but I think you're going to have a lot of people that are upset if Targett is the opening day starter at left back. I think a lot of people are going to say he's not good enough.
Yeah, but if we get a backup left back, obviously, with the money we get from Bertrand, I don't think that'll be an issue because he won't be starting if we get a better left back anyway. Yeah,
but I would say that he's going to push. I mean, I think it's right. He's right to push for a move in terms of his career. If he wants to actually play, then I think if Bertrand's not going to go, then I think he will push to move away. And if he stays and then we bring in somebody else to start, I think he'll be upset and probably push for a move, which I'm not going to blame him for. I mean, he's had starting spots on other teams at this point. He played, I think, well enough when we were, when he was in the team. Bertrand missed a good chunk of the season, came back in and replaced him right away. And my one thing with Targett is I think as a wing back, he's fine in terms of getting forward and crossing the ball. He can, he's good from a dead ball as well. And I tend to think he doesn't get forward enough and get into the box and provide really a goal scoring threat. But saying that, Bertrand only scored once last season, I think. And Targett, if I remember correctly, was the guy on the end of the cross from Jan Valery against Bournemouth that secured our staved off our relegation fears, that really kept us in the Premier League. So, I can't say that he's not going to get forward enough, but we will have to see. And Ralph's changed a lot about how we play, and I have no doubt that he can continue to improve target. So if you had to pick one, which one do you think will be here on opening day for the team?
Honestly, it is so hard to say, Matt. I don't know.
I'm going to say Target. I think Bertrand will go, and that'll crush me because I like Ryan Bertrand. But I think if Ralph has a say in terms of who stays, I think it's going to be Target.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. But it's hard to imagine because we've been with Bertrand for what? This is going to be his 6th season, I think. And he's always been a staple of our team when fit. It's going to be hard to imagine a team without him. But as you said, Ralph prefers younger players. He doesn't want to sign anyone over 24. So he obviously wants to keep a young squad. And I don't know. I just feel bad saying it, but I think Ryan Bertrand's going to leave as well.
All right. We will see. It'll be interesting. And you mentioned the fact that Ralph doesn't want to sign players over the age of 24. Did you get a chance to look at that article in Sport Bild or see any of the quotes that came out of it?
I actually did, and I read it in German myself. Yeah, it was interesting.
That's right, because you speak how many languages?
I speak 7 languages myself.
Well, I speak one, and poorly, as people who listen to this podcast will know. So I had to get the translation, so I don't know if I got the right thing. And it's I don't know. So what are your initial thoughts on the article? And it was, for even in the Google translation version that I read, I thought it was pretty good. But what did you kind of take away from it in terms of what Sport Bill was able to get out of him?
Well, obviously they were able to determine what Ralph himself said, that he wants 5 signings in this summer. It depends on the people that go out. It depends on whether we sell all the people we want to sell. I think we want to sell Austin for £8 million to Villa, and that's looking likely because realistically, if we sign Che Adams and Redmond start up top with Ings and Long as substitute strikers, I really don't see Austin getting any minutes next season. So I think he's going to leave, and that'll probably pave the way for some more players to leave in order to get Ralph to get 5 players in this summer.
I mean, I guess let's go to the Austin. Moving on, just quickly. I mean, does he fit the system at all? And does he offer the things that we need in the 4-2-2 system? 2-2, however many twos are there?
Honestly, what I think is he's not exactly a striker that runs a lot, right? And he's just there to score goals. And I'm afraid that doesn't fit in with what Ralph wants as a vision for the team. And I think he's going to have to leave. And also, to move on, what Ralph said is that he's found a job at Southampton that fills him up and he's not ready to run away. That's really interesting, actually, because usually in the past couple of jobs that he's had, he leaves after about 2 seasons. And he also said in the interview that he doesn't want to coach in Germany again because he thinks that the league is much more entertaining in England. And I think that's actually very exciting because we've got a coach who's probably the best one we've had in 3-4 years and debatably better than Koeman. Some people will argue with my opinion, obviously, but we had a much better squad then. If you ask me, if Ralph Hasenhuttl was in charge, then we'd have been much more consistent and we wouldn't have gone on that terrible run in the beginning of 15-16. But Ralph, he said that he wants to stay. He said that he doesn't want to run away, and he said that he likes it in England. And I think that's it's interesting because it means that if he has a good season next season, he might even sign a contract extension. And I find that very, very interesting indeed.
Yeah, I was really encouraged by everything I read in the article, and some of the stuff that you kind of get from his philosophy, and you can pick it up from different places. But one of the things that the what you just pointed out, that the job fills him up, that means a lot to me as a fan who's watched players and coaches come in and move away relatively quickly. You've seen, Koeman fall out with the board and go. You saw Pochettino, who nobody kind of, is mad at him for moving on, but you see that happen. And then we've had a series of kind of short-term managerial appointments who really, when you look at Hughes, he looked at it as a job. This was a job, and he was here to do a job, and that just doesn't give a lot of excitement to us. But when you see somebody who seems to be as invested in the team and invested in the club and invested in the project as Hasenhuttl is, and the job, getting joy out of your job is something that is like, not everybody gets that opportunity. And so to have somebody who finds that joy, and maybe it only lasts 3 or 4 years, but that's 3 or 4 years of where it's going to be, he's going to put in the extra work. He's already back working now. He's not laying around. He's not on vacation. He is doing the job that he loves. Bar, being able to play his piano. I guess that had to stay in Germany, if that was translated correctly. So, I don't know. I was really encouraged by the article, and I would say that it's probably one of the better ones that I've read on him in terms of what they were able to get out of him. But one thing that stood out was in Germany, he said, I think he was kind of just a coach. Like, he was tactics and players and managing, that relationship between he and the players and the tactics and all of this stuff. But that he's more involved in kind of the everyday decisions that are going on around Southampton. And I don't know, does that stand out to you? Because I would say that more and more places are going to the director of football model, where the manager is now just a coach and you just deal with the players on the pitch. And it seems like maybe Southampton is going the opposite direction almost.
I think, as Ralph, he always visits the youth players. He sometimes goes out in the city to see people. He's the person who is probably behind the new Saints Fest, where they get to connect with the fans. I think he's a really, really good addition to the club. I'm so glad he came, because he's really revolutionized the way the club see the fans. He's always mentioning the fans. He's always emphasizing the connection of the football with the fans. Well, it's safe to say that he, as a de facto director of football, even though it's not exactly stated, he's doing a really good job. And I'm really glad at the job he's doing, because all the stuff he's done, it's really improved the club. And the connection that he has with the people is really improving compared to other clubs.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can just look at the Maurizio Sarri situation. He's now gone from Chelsea after, getting them into the Champions League, winning the Europa League, and not good enough. And now he's at Juve, which I think he'll be much happier with. But you look at some of the relationships that some of the other coaches or managers have with their owners and their fan bases, and it's not great. But one thing that Hasenhuttl did mention is his relationship with Gao, and he talked about loose contact, I think is how it translated anyway. That there's not much between him and Gao in terms of discussions or things like that, and I don't think it's surprising to anybody. But does that worry you at all that maybe we don't have enough contact there?
Well, let's be real. When Gao makes an announcement, it's usually only from China, right? Yeah. He's always like, the news is like, Gao makes an announcement from Shanghai. Gao talks to Southampton FC fan supporters in Shanghai. Like, come on, let's be real. Nobody gives a bloody toss about what he says in China. He's barely here for games. He's never communicating with the board. He recently said he doesn't even want to give money to the club. He's not treating it like a pig to be fattened, if you saw that quote. Mm-hmm. It shows that he's just there in it for the publicity. He's not there to connect with Ralph. He's not there to run the club. He's going to pay some people to do it for him just so his name can be there. So in all honesty, that doesn't surprise me that Ralph doesn't have much connection with him.
All right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure that connection, that the connection to China is the reason that we are going on the publicity tour to China this year. But Ralph mentioned that he was only going to send about 5 senior players, and the rest are going to be youth players going over there because the training situation is not there. I think they'll be there a very short time. I think it's land, open training session, game the next day, get on the plane, fly home, because we have actual preparation to do. And I think that may be one of those things where that's where the conflict will be, is the PR wing of the club that it's trying to grow in China, or and versus the actual development of the team and the ability to compete in the Premier League. You got to realize that going to places like China is not great. And just from the air quality to the travel time to the recovery facilities to all of those things, I think are super, super important that we have kind of top quality care for the players. Because if you show up in the Premier League and you're not ready, that's not great. You show up and get beat. You show up and have a 0-0 against Burnley on the opening day when you should be winning that game, And even last season, Mark Hughes kind of spoke of basically the trip to China set them back 2 or 3 weeks, and they had to come back and work on just getting back to basic fitness because the trip to China was so bad. And so you don't want that. You can't have that happen when you're on such a kind of a tight timeline in terms of, and you're expecting the guys to do the work that Ralph is going to be expecting them to do. So I think it's going to be super important that we get those guys back quickly. And hopefully, it may not be what Gal wants, because if I was expecting the Southampton first team to show up and I show up and it's a bunch of kids I've never seen before who don't even have numbers or names in the back of their shirts, running around with maybe a recognizable figure or two, I'd be pretty upset. But I'm saying that as a guy who's going to take his son to go see Arsenal play Bayern Munich, and I'm fully aware that I'm not going to see probably the best of either of those two teams. But maybe my son will be okay with that just because it's Arsenal and that's his team.
Yeah, it's the club is beginning to turn into a bit of a Man United. They're trying to increase the PR because obviously the club isn't a big club, but the club, don't hate me for saying that, but we're obviously not as big as a top 6 club when it comes to fans worldwide. And Gao is obviously trying to improve that, to improve shirt sales, which is why we're going to open a massive megastore, a club megastore in Shanghai. And the PR of the club is going to clash with the footballing vision, obviously, because the money that the PR could bring in could be more because of all the TV revenue that we could be earning, right? However, what Gao seems to not understand is that a football club plays football. A football club requires football players that are fit, football players that play quality football and are prepared. And he thinks that risking that by doing a PR stunt in China where the air quality is not exactly that good is a bad idea. Let's be honest. And that's why Gal needs to realize that footballing is more important.
Yeah, I think what will happen if we miss out on Premier League football at any point, then profits are going to go, through the floor. That's what's going to happen. Is the moment you lose that Premier League TV revenue, everything changes, and no amount of shirt sales in Shanghai is going to bring that back up. So that is going to be a point of contention, I think, in the future, and hopefully it all kind of works out. But we'll just kind of have to see. All right, so I think that does it for any kind of news topics, unless you have something else that you want to bring up. But otherwise, I say we move on. We have a question here. And people can send in their questions either on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, email, drop a comment on the website. There's a ton of ways to get involved with that. And patrons can also get involved with that, and they have priority for having their questions answered on the show each and every week. It's one of the things you get, one of the perks you get of being a patron, including access to a private group chat on Discord, and also access to an extra podcast episode per month for the $5 per month patrons. But Charlie Mercer writes in and says he's at Charlie Mercer, Charlie_Mercer_ on Twitter. He says, do you think we need to sign 2 center backs? Personally, I feel this is vital as Stevens and Hoot aren't good enough. Yoshi is getting older and we lack pace at the back. So we haven't talked necessarily about a center back option this episode necessarily, but it's definitely been one of the places that I would say we need to add. If we add Che Adams, that means we have a winger, we have Che Adams, and I think the other place that I would say is to go get would be a center back. But for you, I mean, 2 center backs, do you think that's too much to ask, or could you see potentially some of these guys, especially Stevens and Hoot, maybe moving out and then us replacing them with 2, or do you think maybe just 1 would be what we would wind up with?
Well, a lot of people like Yannick Vestergaard and a lot of people like Jan Bednarek, and a lot of people like Maya Yoshida as well. But people still aren't happy with the amount of centre-backs we have. I think what's needed is one proper centre-back who will guide the rest of the team in order to do a lot of commanding, to guide the defence on their path. And let's be real, 2 centre-backs is a bit excessive, isn't it? Because we've already got Jack Stevens, Wesley Hoot coming back from Celta, Yannick Vestergaard, Jan Bednarek, and Maya Yoshida. That's 6 already. And if we buy 2 more, we'll have 8. That's money which could be spent reinforcing the attack or buying a backup fullback. As long as we buy 1 centre-back in order to command the defence, to train them how to be solid, to tell them where to be during games, like Van Dijk and Font were to us. I think that's enough. And I think 2 centre-backs is a bit excessive, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that will be one of the ways that we can, or one of the places that we can actually cut down the squad, is by only having, maybe Yoshida retreats to some sort of the backup role, and we get that sort of leadership in the back line from somebody that we bring in. But I don't know. I don't necessarily see us picking up 2. I think that may be a little excessive. But I guess it depends on what Ralph wants to do. If we're gonna have this complete clear out, and that includes maybe selling Vestergaard, which I don't see happening. I don't see Yoshida moving. I don't see Bednarak moving. I think bringing in 2 guys is maybe too much. I don't think Hoot has a future at the club, so hopefully that gets taken care of. But maybe it's going to wind up being another loan season for him. But I don't see us getting 2 guys there. I don't think that's really there. And one thing that I was going to bring up was, there's the dog. He's just going to make an appearance on the show. It's fine. If Yoshida, sorry, not Yoshida, but if Bertrand winds up, staying and Target stays, maybe we see Bertrand move over to that left center back spot and maybe provide a little bit more clarity there, a little bit more versatility there, and similar to what Nacho Monreal has been able to do at Arsenal. But that could be a situation where we keep both Bertrand and Target, and then we have a little bit more leadership, but also give those guys the game time that they need. So I think that would be something that we may see, but I don't see us actually going out in the transfer market and picking up 2 center backs, not that are going to be any better than what we have already.
Yeah, honestly, I completely agree.
All right. Do you have any other questions that maybe you'd like to address, or are we done?
Nah, my page, most of the questions were about blah, blah, who do you think will win the Premier League, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. You get me?
Yeah. And the answer is not Liverpool. And so we can move on. So Dan, I just want to say thanks for doing this again. I know,
anytime, honestly.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun to chat, and I just appreciate you doing this, and I appreciate you running the page, and congratulations on the success of the page. And if people want to follow it, the link is in the show notes, but it's at PremWorldWide on Instagram, and you are personally on Twitter at Deadly Janepo. I don't know. I'll say that I'll alternate all season probably, but it's always a pleasure to chat with you, and I appreciate you coming on and doing the show, especially after we talked kind of late last week, and then things changed over the weekend, and we, so we do it again, and I'm okay with it if you're okay with it, and I appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, it was great to be on it. Thanks so much.
All right, man. Well, you enjoy your summer, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Yeah, we will.
And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Dan. You can find him on Instagram at PremWorldWide. If you don't follow them already, get in touch, get up to date with all of the news and rumors that are going around all around the league. You can also follow him on Twitter at Deadly Janepo. You don't get the same coverage of the entire league, but you get his thoughts on Southampton, which is, I think what brings us together. So anyway, give him a follow. The links are in the show notes. That helps a lot. If you want to follow this show, you can do so. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at SFCDELL_IVERY or at Facebook.com/SFC Delivery. The easiest way to get links to those is to head to SouthamptonDelivery.com. There you have links to all of those things and past episodes of the podcast. Plus, you get things like the newsletter, where I asked for some people to give me some stories about their dad. And Tim, who has been on the show several times before, wrote in to say this. I'd like to give a shout out to my dad for the show. I talked about how he got me into being a Saints fan on my first show appearance, but to quickly recap the story, he's been watching Saints since he went to university in Southampton in 1976. He took me to my first game against Everton in 1994, which Saints won 2-0. We've obviously had many ups and downs the past 25 years, but always look forward to getting the train down from London, walking to St. Mary's together, the scenic route alongside the River Itchen, and then after the game, our post-match analysis on the same walk back. So hopefully you have some stories that you can share, or some thoughts that you can share, some memories that you have with your dad or some other father figure in your life, and hopefully they surround Saints. If they surround Portsmouth, then I definitely don't ever want to hear about them, but that's okay. So anyway, I hope that you had a good Father's Day if you are at all involved. I am both a son and a father. Sometimes it's hard. We make mistakes. It's just the way it goes. But anyway, hopefully it's fond memories and all of that. So if you're enjoying the show and you would like to leave a review, that would be most helpful. You can do that wherever you listen to podcasts. If you haven't subscribed, you can do that on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, or wherever you listen. There are links on the show website, which once again is southamptondelivery.com. If you'd like a little bit extra, you can get that by supporting the show on Patreon at patreon.com/SFC Delivery. There are links once again in the show notes for you to get there. For a small fee, you can get access to things like a private chat, having your questions, or a priority for having your questions answered on the show. And some patrons, if they pay $5 or more per month, get an extra episode of the show. So really, it's just a way for us to make sure the show keeps running, and it really, really does help out. So shout out to the partners of the show. The logo is done by We Are Southampton. Matt Beeling, who runs the We Are Southampton page on Instagram, is so good at his job. The club now pays him to do it. So check out We Are Southampton, and thanks again to Matt for everything he's done for the show. And Jay over at the Southampton page, be sure to check out the Southampton page on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook for all your Southampton FC news and needs. Jay is the guy that's also doing Brave the Shave, so if you can support just a little bit, the link is in the show notes. It will help those people who are living with cancer, help make their lives a little bit better. So anyway, that is it for this week. We will be back next week with whatever the Saints news is at the time. If you have questions, send them in. We'll get them on the show. And until then, remember that together, we march on.